I'm ready. I saw there were some big names I'm going after. You got Kent Clothier on this thing.
Yep, he's been on here. I was in the billionaire boardroom for the last 3 years with him.
Hmm.
And I'm really at this time making a decision whether I'm going to keep going with that or not.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Cool.
let me know. Shit, wrong thing here. All right, let's get started. 3, 2, 1, and welcome everybody to the 68th episode of the #InvestThis podcast. I'm your host, Scott Bauer, and today we have Steve Trang with us with the Real Estate Disruptors podcast. Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm moving and shaking. A little bit about him. He has been in real estate for 12 years, actively wholesaling for just over 1, so we're definitely going to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
However, he is a serial entrepreneur and is intent on making an impact in wholesaling. He is the host of the Real Estate Disruptors podcast and founder of the 100 Millionaires movement. So we'll talk about that as well. Steve, why don't you give the listeners a little bit more about your background and, kind of what you're focused on now?
Like I said, I've been in real estate for 12 years. I started as an engineer. I got into it coming from a different career that I was not excited about. And I think you'll find a lot of people that end up in real estate came from another career where they were less excited about that career. So I got real estate traditional. Go ahead.
What was that career? What obviously you were.
So I was designing cell phone parts. So like if you look at your hard drive or your USB, stuff I was working on are so freaking outdated now, but at some point it was leading edge.
Well, 12 years ago, we're 2019, so that would have been 2007?
2007 is when I got started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how'd you segue into the real estate space? What happened there?
So we were buying rental properties around that time, which was stupid. Thank God the banks denied our loans when we were trying to buy rental properties. And I met a broker who was doing really well, or said he was doing well at least. So he taught me a lot about real estate, about sales. So I learned everything underneath him.
Okay. Is that broker still in business today?
As far as I know, no.
Okay. Did he do some questionable things during that time? And
no, not at all. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's is a coach.
Yep.
But not everyone's a doer. And
Yep.
I learned along the way that he was excellent at coaching, not so much at executing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what do they say? If you can't do, teach. Is that what it is? Something like that. So
Exactly.
Totally get that. Well, that was 12 years ago. You learned a lot to get into the business as an agent to begin with.
Yeah, so I started as an agent. 2012, I got my broker's license, opened my own brokerage in 2013. Had to figure out how to get more listings. So I ended up, I was getting pretty good at pay-per-click at that time. So I was like, well, if I'm going to find sellers, I can find them on pay-per-click. Let's see what they're looking for on Google to sell their homes. And what they're looking for is sell my house and buy my house and so on. So I ventured into that space. And at that time, back in 2012, it was basically Sean Terry and me.
Yeah.
In the pay-per-click space. Today is a whole nother world. But at that time, it was affordable to get into pay-per-click. So I did that for a little bit. I was buying houses to flip passively. Wasn't trying to buy them. I was trying to list them. But the first few times someone was like, yeah, I want a cash offer. Like, no, you really don't. I said, no, I really do. So the first couple of houses I bought for 80% because that's what I was offering. And I was like, well, if 80%, if they're saying yes to 80%, then I need to back that up to 75 because I really would rather list it than buy it. And people were still saying yes to 75. So we're buying houses at 75% and we ran out of money. We couldn't buy any more houses. So at that time I said, well, shoot, I need to start offloading these. And Jamil was a Zillow lead who was calling me on one of my flips or one of my, wholesale deals. And he's like, hey, I want to buy this house. And if you have anything else, let me know. And this is around, I want to say like 2014, 15,
Yep.
Maybe a little later. But he took me under his wings to teach me how to wholesale. And he was my buyer for the longest time on deals. When I ran out of money, I basically just lowered my offer by 10,000 and sent it to Jamil.
Yep. Totally get it, man. I have a similar kind of upbringing, so to speak, with a guy that Jamil used to actually work with directly. And I know you know who he is as well. His first name's John. We're just going to leave it there. Anyways, so that was 2014, 2015. or in 2019, what's been happening? I mean, you said you've only really been wholesaling for a year, but that
Actively wholesaling. So that was like falling into it, right? That's like, okay, well, if they want a cash offer versus listing, then I guess we'll take it. But we weren't trying to get it. We were just trying to get more listings. But in April of last year, I partnered up with Max Jimenez, and he's been running our wholesale division. He's the one that's grinding it every day. He's the one that's meeting the sellers, setting up our cold calling, setting up all our tools, training our guys, doing the role play. I mean, he's doing the day-to-day awful stuff, making sure that's up and running.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really more at the high level. We bounce ideas off each other, but he's the one that's really running the operation. I couldn't do it without him.
Shoot, there's a book I just read recently. It kind of goes with traction, but it's, gosh, what the hell was that name?
Rocket Fuel?
What's that? No, Rocket Fuel, correct. Yeah, where you find, your counterpart, somebody that's really going to be able to be your integrator type thing. And It sounds like that's him on that side of the business, which is great.
Yeah, that's Max. He's the integrator. I mean, I don't think he loves being the integrator, but he's damn good at it.
Yep. So, well, you know what? Sometimes Grant Cardone talks about this. You don't always got to love what you're doing. Sometimes you just got to do it because it makes money and it's what gives you success for the time being, right? And he can do that for sort of. I mean, I can tell you, I'm in that boat right now. I don't necessarily love everything that I'm doing, but I know that I'm doing it now so that I can get all the systems in place to be able to offload it later, right?
100%.
Now, at the beginning of the call, you said you're a serial entrepreneur. You said that you have a brokerage. Now you have the wholesale business. What else do you got? What else are you working on?
So started with the brokerage and the team. So originally the brokerage was supposed to be just a team, but with what we were doing as a team, we were attracting other agents like, hey, I like what you're doing. I like to do it too. I was like, okay, well, join my brokerage and I'll teach you everything I know. And then that swelled from the intent of like 4 or 5 agents to over 105 today.
Stunning Homes Realty, is that correct?
Stunning Homes Realty.
Okay.
So we got the brokerage, we got the traditional real estate team, we got the wholesaling, we got the flipping. Opened a title company a little over a year ago, and I got my app, the wholesaling app, OfferFast Homes.
Okay.
Got the podcast. And I'm doing a little bit of mentoring. I'm not, like broadcasting that, but I'm doing a little bit of that right now. So it's just, I don't know, whatever the market requires or is looking for, I will find a way to fill it.
Yep. It can be tough. The shiny object syndrome, I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into. I know that I was at some point and still do to an extent every day. Is hard to overcome. One of the main things that I've been able to take away from my business and from what I've been able to do is that focus is key. That when you focus is when things really get done.
Yeah.
Even earlier this year, we were trying to get into some multifamily stuff that I was working on, and my wholesale business was kind of starting to fall, not to the wayside, but it wasn't exploding like it should have been. Mm-hmm. And so I just put my head down and, really got after the wholesale side of things, and everything picked up dramatically.
Right.
So that's super important. How do you battle that? I mean, even what you talk about, the podcast, the brokerage, the wholesale business, fix and flips every now and again, whatever, that's a lot. How do you juggle that?
Well, I've just got some amazing people. So I've personally spent, $200,000 in personal development, on leadership, on personal growth. And so I've just learned, tips and tricks and systems along the way to really maximize, the people that you work with. So my people are empowered. They make decisions without me, being the bottleneck. One of the challenges that some businesses have is the leader wants to approve everything or can't let go. That's not me. I hire you. This is your thing. You're in charge of it. This is your baby. And if you screw it up, we'll figure out where you screwed it up so that it doesn't happen again. But it's your baby, right? It's my operation, but it's your operation too. So there's a lot of empowerment, ownership. There's no excuses. And I wouldn't say we have a high turnover, but we've gone through a lot of people to find the right people.
Yeah, that's huge. When you're talking about personal development and these different courses and stuff you've taken, for the listeners out there, where can you point them? Where could they go if they want to learn leadership skills? Want to be in that.
So leadership skills, one of the best for leadership is just a whole bunch of John Maxwell books. My favorite is Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. So John Maxwell obviously is the godfather of leadership. A lot of personal productivity and entrepreneurship stuff is from Darren Hardy. So I was subscribed to his Darren Daily. I watch it every single morning. Some days I miss it. I'll catch it to the next day.
What is that, Darren? Because I love that stuff. I mean,
Darren Daily.
Darren Daily. Okay.
Yep. DarrenDaily.com. So I watched that. I want to say I've listened to it for like the last 2-3 years every morning. I've gone to his Insane Productivity course. I've gone to his Entrepreneurial Roller Coaster course. I've gone through his High Performance Forum. So there's that. I've gone through Craig Proctor. That's coaching for traditional real estate. So the strategic coach for a lot of people that are struggling with entrepreneurship as in general, where you're trying to figure out how to take your one business to the next level. There's lots of really cool systems in there that I got from a coach. So there's just lots of great programs out there. The thing is, you have to invest in yourself. And it's funny, going back to what I was talking about, like some mentoring stuff, like, I have people that reach out to me. I was like, well, if you want me to mentor you, it's not going to be cheap. Let's just put that out there. It's not going to be cheap, right?
Your time is worth a lot, right?
My time is extremely valuable. But what's crazy to me is what I'm charging, I would have gladly paid 10, 15, 20 times what I'm charging as a 27-year-old getting into real estate versus what I know now. Like, I can shortcut so many things, but I've invested way more, right, than what I'm charging. So I just think it's humorous. Like, if you were to talk to yourself 10 years ago, what would you have paid to know what 2019 Scott knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a number to put on that, to be honest.
Right. But there's so many people that are opposed to investing themselves, and it's just very funny. There's a reason why some people rise to the top and other people just kind of stay where they're at.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Coaching, mentoring, I mean, I can tell you, I don't know, $500,000, something. I mean, something stupid like that over the last 5 years, 6 years that have been put into education for me.
Right.
And it still doesn't end, right? I mean, that's a big takeaway I think the listeners should get out of this, is that investing in yourself is something that is an ongoing thing. You cannot just stop.
Right.
And when you do stop, that's when things start to fall down.
That's when people pass you.
Yep, absolutely. And it can be hard, cutting checks for 25 grand, 50 grand, to be part of groups or to go to events and things like that is hard to do. But it's needed, right?
Right.
Would you say what has been the most beneficial course for you, if you could name one, that have really put you over the edge, or really pushed you to that next level?
I think High Performance Forum was pretty solid for me.
Who is that? Is that also a Darren
That's
Hardy?
Darren Hardy.
Okay.
I would say of all of them, the one I did last year was Sandler. So the Sandler sales systems, I would say that's number one. Of everything I've gone through, I think last year was the right time for me to go through that sales training.
Mm-hmm.
For my entire career, I've been a pretty crappy salesperson. I'm not a good salesperson, or I wasn't good at selling. And I think I took my greatest weakness and turned it into one of my greatest strengths in the last year.
And that's just focusing, or is it awareness? You were aware that you became aware that your sales maybe wasn't so great, and so you took focus and put it into that side of your business or side of your life to really
it's funny.
Maximize it.
I didn't go in there to learn how to sell. I went in there because I knew that's where all the home investor guys were, and I was trying to get some deals. Like, what, you guys are hanging out in here? Let's hang out, right? I'll pay whatever you got to pay to be in that room. Like, I didn't even care about the cost to be in that room. I didn't even care what the instructor was talking about. I just wanted to hang out with a bunch of people that are buying deals really cheap.
Yep.
Well, on the way, I was like, man, this guy's teaching some really good stuff. So that's been a huge game changer for me.
Have you done any John Martinez stuff, or know about John Martinez?
I do know John Martinez, and he basically is teaching Sandler.
Yeah. Same type of thing, right? It's Sales 101. Grant Cardone does the same type of thing, similar. Mm-hmm. Cardone University. But I think it spills over into more than just sales. It's your whole life, right? Because we're always selling, whether we believe it or not. Yep. Selling something, selling to your wife, selling to your kids, selling to your, let's go to dinner here, or go on this vacation, or not go on this vacation, right?
Yep. 100%.
Always selling. There's a book I'm reading again right now that is, I'm just blanking out today. I don't know what it is, but Never Split the Difference.
Mm-hmm.
Great book.
Yep.
Great book.
Yep.
I think that's one of the ones that you could read over and over and over and get something out of it every time.
Yep.
But it kind of talks about in there that life is negotiation. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like I have a friend who was having a gender reveal party. He knew the gender, but none of us didn't. So he was gonna have a party. And one of the things he talks about in there is labeling. Like I already like if you label something, people want to correct it. People can't help but correct it. I was like, Brandon, there's no need for me to come. I already know. We already know you're having a boy. He's like, no, I'm having a girl. But because I labeled it, he had to correct it. If I said like, are you having a boy or girl, he wouldn't say anything, right? So, yeah, I think there's lots of valuable lessons in Never Split the Difference, and it's things that you've done in your life that you didn't know why it was working. Does a good job explaining why it does work.
Absolutely, that's a good way to put it. Where do you think you're going to go? I mean, what does the next 5 years look like for you? And then we'll go off on a podcast tangent because I want to know more about your podcast and kind of talk about that to the listeners and be able to direct them over to you. Yeah,
future, I don't really know for sure because I've got so many ideas that are always popping in my head. Like you said, shiny object syndrome. I'm really working hard on my app right now, and I'm trying to grow my influence just like you are. I see up there we got bigger pockets ahead of us. You see, Dave Ramsey ahead of us. Like right now, it's not even important, but I would love to at some point, be on the same level as Dave Ramsey or Tim Ferriss or one of these other podcasts.
Yeah.
So that's some of my aspirations.
And I tell you what, that's a good goal. It's a great goal. There's nothing stopping you from getting there. I think. Let's talk about mindset for a second. Let's actually, Before we talk about the podcast, let's talk about mindset. How does mindset come into your life?
I think this is one of the places where I've been very fortunate in my life. I have irrational confidence. Like I just expect to be great at everything I do, which is just retarded, right? But that's kind of been my mindset my whole life. And it's actually the reason why I don't golf, because it reminds me that I'm human. So I think confidence, a high level of confidence is super important because it's this cycle where if you're confident you can do it, then you're going to go do it with the expectation it's going to work. And because you're expecting it to work, it's going to have higher likely level of success, confirming that it was going to work. Versus if you go in there like, I don't know if this is for me, so you don't go into it all the way, the results aren't as good, and it just kind of confirms, it wasn't really meant for me. So there's this irrational amount of confidence that's been extremely helpful for me because failure is not an option. I think it's due to my upbringing. Failure wasn't an option. You had to get straight A's. You had to get 100% of your test, and everything you did had to be at the highest level. So I think that's been huge for me to transition into the entrepreneurial world. And I'm not saying there aren't failures. Like we screw up all the time. There's a whole bunch of failures, but we take those failures, learn from them, and get better so that we can get the result we eventually expected or previously expected.
Well, I mean, that's what growth is, right? I mean, you fail forward, so you failed and correct it. You fail and then you correct it. So the more failures you can have, as long as you learn from them, really the faster you're going to grow. I think in today's society, the way that, people look at failure as being a negative thing. And it's easy to get wrapped up in that trap. I mean, let's be honest. It really is. Yeah. But that's not how you grow. And it's so important for people to understand that they're going to make mistakes to move forward, And that's,
you look at it, right? Like you got your podcast and I got my podcast. You said this is 63?
68.
68, right? And I'm like 54. Mm-hmm. And it's funny to me. Like I get people messaging me every once in a while, like what mic do you use? What camera do you use? This and that. And like when's the best day to post it? This and that. Like none of that crap matters. Just freaking get started. But there's always paralysis analysis in every industry.
Absolutely. I mean, you get wholesalers that or new people coming into the real estate space. They say, oh, they need to get a website. They need to get a business card. They need to get I don't know, whatever other BS they need. It's like, no. You don't need any of that. You need to send out marketing. You need to get the phone to ring. That's what you need to do.
All right. You need to talk to people.
Yeah. Talk to people, build those relationships, understand them. Right. Mm-hmm. That's funny that you say that. Well, let's talk about the podcast then. Let's switch over to that. So you're at 53 episodes, you said?
Yeah, 53, 54, somewhere around there, yeah.
So I've seen your podcast, and I love the way that it's set up because you have a room dedicated to it. It's probably in your office, I'm guessing. It's black,
It's at Lister Pros Studios.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So this podcast isn't live, but we're going to be going live on it so that all the podcasts are live. So we're going to have live questions, et cetera.
Right.
why'd you decide to do that instead of doing it like we're doing now, or recording ahead of time and putting it out later?
Because I knew that my personality, if I were to record it, then I'm going to want to edit it. Then I'm going to want it to sound perfect. And we're going to have to filter things out. I just know myself, if I go live and screw up, at least it's tolerated, right? People don't mind you making mistakes when you're live.
Right.
So for me, it was really lowering the bar for me for the product I put out. And there's a lot of pressure to do it live, but for me, it was just easier to go live than do post-production and edits and this and that. Because again, I have people asking me like post-production. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Once the episode's done, I upload it to YouTube, I upload it to iTunes. There's literally zero editing. There's there's ahs, there's gum smacking. It's not perfect, but I don't want it to be.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Is it just you that runs the podcast? Do you do all the posting, and you do all of, you don't edit, but all the posting for it? I guess it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I do all that. The only thing that, so we got the guys in the studios, right? They'll do the thumbnail beforehand, and they'll operate it so that it's streaming well to Facebook and well, YouTube has been a struggle, but it's streaming to Facebook. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, right, about empowering people. Like, this is your baby, this is your department. So when I decided to start a podcast, I didn't say, what do I need to start a podcast? I said, who do I know that can help me start a podcast? And there's Jordan Nielsen, who owns Lister Pros. I know he's got a podcast studio. So I call him. I say, Jordan, I want to do a podcast. Can I use your studio? He said, yes. Can I use your guys? Yes. Perfect. That's it. Let's go.
Let's do it.
It's who, not what. It's not details.
Man, I tell you what, that's just massive action right there, right? I mean, that's all that was you taking massive action and trying to get what you were trying to accomplish in your outcome, which is starting a podcast, right? So you put the connections together, thought to your head. Did you go out? You weren't at the Phoenix Real last night, were you?
I was not. I wanted to go. It's challenges with, there were things that prevented me from going.
3 kids, you got a wife, you got things like that, people sick. I totally get it. Yep. Well, one of the speakers that was up there yesterday was talking about just networking, right? That was kind of his whole presentation, is networking and who do you know? It's really, when you go into a room of strangers, you got to have an outcome that you're trying to get out of it. And it's really trying to connect people and figure out who's in that room that you need to talk to.
Right.
Right. And if you have an outcome, if you want to talk to somebody, and when you get there, you meet the organizer and you ask them, hey, who do I need to know? This is my outcome. I'm trying to get out of this being here. Mm-hmm. Who do I need to talk to that's going to be here? Right.
Yep.
And that connection is huge.
Yeah. It's who and paying them what they're worth. That's the other challenge, right? People, they want to skimp. I mean, the generic example, right, is like your real estate agent that you want to offer lower commission on. Jordan's good, right? His studio is good. He's got good quality stuff. So when I say, like, how much are you going to charge? And he gave me a price, like, done. Let's do it. Because you're worth it, because I know I won't have to worry about it later.
Man, gosh, I tell you what, that's so true. Even when it comes to hiring employees and people like that, pay them what they're worth. I mean, that's a big deal. And if it's hands off, and I actually just had a conversation with one of my coaches yesterday about this, because we kind of had some admin changes for the podcast. And, it's a challenge when you switch people and you have to train them and teach them and all of this. I'd rather just be able to offload it, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So if I bring in somebody that is experienced and knows how to do it, right, mm-hmm. makes life so much easier. I can focus on what I'm good at. Exactly.
Which is making a lot of money.
Right. That's exactly right. And money keeps the wheel turning. So yep. I want to say it was Henry Ford that said, I think, maybe it wasn't Henry Ford. But anyway, surround yourself with really quality people. I mean, that's all it is. You don't have to be the best at every piece of your business, but you can attract the best and be the best and have the best people around you. And so that's it. That's a huge thing. So yeah, I guess back down to the 5-year plan, you said that you don't really know exactly, you don't have a direction for where you want to go.
I mean, perfect world, the app takes off, right? And it's a multi-million-dollar company, billion-dollar company, right? Like, that's perfect world. But realistically, I'm going to be wholesaling for a little bit, as long as that's legal. I think Dax talked last night. I was curious to hear what the takeaways were from that. But, there are challenges with wholesaling at this exact moment. So, but yeah, the great thing is going back to what you were talking about, who and the network, you and I are in a private mastermind together.
Mm-hmm.
And even if crap hits the fan, you and I are in a room filled with some of the smartest people who will figure it out. And
I mean, proximity is power at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ken Clothier talked about that, about the boardroom, which is another mastermind that I was in. Proximity is power. When you're around people that know how to solve the problem, then you really never have a problem because you got people around that know how to solve it, right?
Exactly. You don't have to be the smartest. Just got to hang out with them.
That's right. That is absolutely correct. Well, just for sake of time here, Steve, are you ready for a lightning round? Let's get into the lightning round.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, man, let's do it. So number one, if you could give our listeners the hashtag invest this tip of the day, what would that be?
I'm repeating myself here, but I would say, there's no better investment than yourself. Invest in yourself.
Yep. Huge tip. Appreciate you sharing that. I think everybody should really rewind this and listen to that again because, I mean, you can't invest. You don't have any better investment than in yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So that's great. Do you have a favorite book that you've read that's had a big impact on your life?
Man, Never Split the Difference. I've read multiple times. Traction's been a huge game changer for me. I say probably of all the books, Traction's been the one that's made the biggest difference in my business.
So I have a question.
Every time I read it, I was like, I read it. It's like, oh, it was a great book. And I did nothing with it. So then I read Rocket Fuel. I was like, man, that was a really good book. So I went back and then implemented a good portion of it.
So I want to ask you about Traction. That book is terribly hard to read from cover to cover. You can't read it like that, right? I mean, it's like read a portion of it at a time. Did you read it all the way through?
I did. So I went through it in Audible twice, and then I bought the book. But there's a story version, Get a Grip, which is a lot easier for most people. So I had my office admin read that one or listen to that one.
Okay.
It's a less technical version, all the same ideas and principles, just less technical.
Awesome. Who's giving you the best advice out there? Somebody that's, really impacted you with the advice they gave you. And what was that advice?
So I mentioned earlier, I was in Craig Proctor coaching. I was in that program for 5 years. Todd Walters was the head coach. And he said one time, you should spend as much time as possible figuring out how to be as lazy as possible. I was like, damn, like that's genius. It sounds ridiculous, right, on a high level. But really, if you can figure out systems and people so that you don't have to be involved, your life is going to be a lot easier.
I think the challenge for that is getting out between your ears, right? For most people out there, myself included.
Yeah.
But that's great advice. All the listeners out there, make sure you take that to heart. How do you like to give back? We talked about do some coaching, mentoring, things like that. Do you do anything else?
The podcast has been the biggest thing. I do the podcast. We get we had over 60,000 downloads so far in the last year, and we're getting 6,000 subscribers on YouTube. So we're impacting people, and I get messages every once in a while. It's like, thanks to you, I was able to make the jump. So that's huge for me. So I appreciate those people that reach out to let me know that. And then we do our monthly meetup. We have over 100 people that come to our meetups. So I think it's just watching people's lives get better. That's how I get back.
Making the impact, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Impact. It doesn't matter about the money. It's about the impact you make. Help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want, right?
100%. Zig Ziglar. It's my favorite quote.
Yep, absolutely. Well, with that being said, how can the listeners reach you if they want to learn more about, Real Estate Disruptors podcast, of course. How else can they find you?
So I would say the easiest way, the way I'm the most responsive is Instagram. So steve.trang, Trang. That's where I'm most responsive. Generally speaking, I usually have, by the time I go to bed, no unread messages. I'll have like 15, 20 throughout the day, but by the time I go to bed, it'll be 0. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm not going to be 100% responsive, but I will always respond.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to include that in the show notes so that all the listeners out there know how to get in touch with you. And I appreciate you being here today, man. There's a lot of nuggets that were dropped that I think the listeners are going to get some really good value out of.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And, let's have a follow-up one of these here in the future, and we'll just keep in touch, man.
All right. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Yeah. Sounds good. Talk to you soon.